everybody in the United States is going to be subject to the covering demand because, let's face it, in the United States in 2011, it's not normal to be completely normal along all axes. All of us are outside of the mainstream in some way and therefore are going to be subjected to the covering demand. When I think about racial covering, I think about individuals who are asked to act white, right, if they want to get ahead in the workplace. So recently there was a lawsuit concerning John T. Malloy's famous book, Dress for Success, because the book contains a chapter about how minorities, racial minorities, should dress for success. And John Malloy says in this widely disseminated handbook that his advice for racial minorities can be distilled into 2 words: dress white. So he says that if you are an African American in a corporate environment, for instance, make every effort to let people forget that you're black. So don't wear an afro, he says, don't wear dreadlocks, don't wear cornrows, don't wear African clothing or clothing that could be associated with an African tradition. Basically, you have to out-white the whites, he says. You have to dress more conservatively, you have to dress more like a white person as a kind of reassurance or comfort strategy in order to persuade whites that you are not threatening to them. With respect to Latinos, Malloy goes on to say that Latinos should not wear any grease in their hair, they should avoid pencil-line mustaches, and that they should also avoid wearing any clothing that is too sharp or precise. From my perspective, this is not a very sharp or precise piece of advice because I have no idea what he's talking about. But nonetheless, we get the general gist, which is to say, if you are outside of the dominant racial group, namely whites, do everything you can to help people disattend the fact that you belong to a non-white group through your grooming practices. Now, you might say, well, dress is just completely trivial, so let me give you another example. When we're thinking about national origin, one of the most upward trending litigation items in the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's docket, is English-only workplaces. So in an English-only workplace, the rule is that if you speak any language other than English in the workplace, you can be fired. And this, in some workplaces, is the case even if you're talking to your family over a break period, even if you're responding to a customer who has spoken to you, say, in Spanish, and you reflexively respond in Spanish. Notice what these workplace rules punish is not a lack of knowledge, but rather a surfeit of knowledge. Right? So I'm not talking here about English proficiency requirements. I actually am all for English proficiency requirements and would uphold their legality. What we're talking about here is a practice that doesn't punish somebody for not being able to speak English, but punishes people for being able to speak English and another language, and says, if you have too much knowledge, you have to pretend like you don't have that knowledge because that makes us uncomfortable. Right? Specifically, if you speak Spanish in the workplace and we can't speak Spanish, we assume that you're speaking about us behind our backs, is what the employer constantly says. So this seems, again, a little bit hubristic on the employer's part, as if every conversation they couldn't understand would perforce have to be about them. But nonetheless, the consequences here are extremely serious for individuals whose first language is not English and who reflexively lapse into that first language in these English-only workplaces. When we move to the sex-gender context, and we think about what kinds of covering demands could be made there, I'm thinking about the demands that women or girls play like men or boys if they want to be accepted as full equals. So I'm thinking about demands that women be as tearless or as aggressive or as analytical or as athletic as the stereotypical man. And of course, I'm not saying that there aren't women who are naturally and authentically this way. There's plenty of women who naturally and authentically possess all of these qualities. But what I am saying is that if a woman doesn't naturally and authentically possess those qualities, she better be able to fake it if she wants to succeed in a traditionally male-dominated workplace. Another example in that context would be the motherhood context, which is to say, if you are fired from the workplace simply for being a woman, I want to be your lawyer because we'll win your lawsuit in a hot second. But if you are a woman who's fired from the workplace for being a mother, the outcome is much less clear. And this is what leads mothers in the workplace to tell other, particularly new mothers in the workplace, not to disclose the fact that they're mothers, lest they be taken less seriously as workers. Because the idea is, if you're a mother, that must mean, according to the sex stereotypes that we have, that you must be the primary caretaker, and so therefore your priority is no longer going to be your work. Okay. I've already given examples from the sexual orientation context, like demands that gay scholars not write on gay subjects. But we also know that it's when gay individuals are not straight acting and who seem to be, quote unquote, flaunting or flamboyant in some way, that they are punished disproportionately in the workplace or by the state or by private individuals. So if you look at the individuals who are the victims of hate crimes, you really only need to look at their pictures and read their biographies to see that they were seen as somehow too gay, right? As not even trying to be straight acting, and were targeted on that basis.